This is the story of how Jake Paul went from working in the law and then banking industry to eventually working for F1 as a graphic designer. I hope you enjoy.
I quit my job on the spot in the bank. I'd gone through like a real rough patch, like emotionally, physically. I was like sick all the time because of stress and stuff, and I was like, I can't do this. Like, I just can't do it anymore. And if I carry on doing this, I genuinely don't think I'm gonna get to 40 or anything. Like, I'm worried I'm gonna have like some heart attack or something. I'm sort of like, oh, here's my portfolio. Like, it's a joke, but I'm like, here's my portfolio, and he's like, literally kind of like glanced at it, moved the piece of paper away, and was like, you want to be a graphic designer? I'm like, yeah, you have no idea. Like, this is my dream. It's been my dream for like the longest time. Blah blah blah. He's like, and you got a law degree? I was like, yeah. He's like, you must really want to be a graphic designer. I was like, yes.
So yeah, do you want to just talk me through and describe how you made it from being a lawyer to working in F1 as a graphic designer?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a simple, from A to B and everything else. It's very much a winding, twisting road. But yeah, basically, in a nutshell, always been arty, always been into computers. Not that's necessarily relevant, but that's kind of how I fell into graphic design and everything else. But one of my dad's friends is like a cartoonist in his spare time. That was his hobby. And growing up, watching him sort of drawing stuff, and he used to do these big MDF like Mickey Mouse cutouts and stuff. And one day we were at his house, and he had like one of those Wacom tablets that you draw on, and it comes up on the computer. I'd never seen one of those before, and I'm like, "What's that?" And he's like, "Oh, and drawing." I'm like, "Like, you can do that on a computer?" He's like, "Yeah, that's how they make like Tom and Jerry or Disney and stuff like that." So I was like, oh, this is really cool. Anyway, that planted a seed that I didn't know about, and I go through school and stuff and being arty and a little bit farty, but it was just ultimately that combination of the computer side of it and the art side of it, and kind of slowly but surely those two paths kind of crossing together. And it was kind of me dabbling in it and photoshopping like Man United kits on my Liverpool supporting mate, and making pretend like I think we decided like Van Persie at the time, and I did a mock-up of him in the kit instead, and was like, Sir Alex Ferguson's pleased to announce Martin's joining Man United, driving my friend's mental.
You're a Man United fan, I'm guessing.
Yeah, no, he's not a United fan in the slightest. Of all the teams, he hates that. But
and you are.
Yeah, it was dabbling in it, and then I got a job at my university, being a graphic designer, and it was just one of those sort of light bulb moments where I was like, oh, like, I didn't know what graphic design necessarily was. I didn't know you could do it as a job, and that was my dream from that point. The problem was I was halfway through like a law degree, so finished that off.
So did you get that job at the graphic designers as like a part-time job?
Yeah.
Whilst you're at uni?
It's for my students' union. So like basically making posters, making like for all the different uni events and stuff. And it was like not a trial by fire, but it really explained to me like having a client and someone coming to you and being like, oh, I like this, but can we make changes to X, Y, and Z? So it was a real sort of chapter or whatever of like this could be what I do going forward. So it was all kind of bit by bit. I did my law degree, graduated, went into law, went into banking, hated both of those jobs, and in the back of my mind was always that seed from way back when I saw that Wacom tablet, where I'm like, oh man, like that would be the dream, just waking up, going to work, being really excited, really happy. What am I going to create today? And I quit my job on the spot in the bank. I'd gone through like a real rough patch, like emotionally, physically. I was like sick all the time because of stress and stuff, and I was like, I can't do this. Like, I just can't do it anymore. And if I carry on doing this, I genuinely don't think I'm going to get to 40 or anything. Like, I'm worried I'm going to have like some heart attack or something. So I was like, right, I'm longing this off. I'm quitting, and I'm gonna try and pursue the design dream. So I think 2 months later, God knows how many applications. We're probably talking like 300, 400, I reckon, off the top of my head, because it was just bang, bang, bang,
You're
bang, bang, bang,
joking.
bang.
Three to 400.
Yeah, I was getting no replies either. That's the most depressing part. Like when you go back in time, like when you sit there, you fill out the application. Because I was doing so many a day, and it was like me hitting refresh and knowing what the new job listings were, because I'd applied for everything. Anyway, I get a shot at a independent shoe company. The only people that ever replied to me with my one-sided A4 piece of paper with the mock-ups really small on it, because I wasn't very confident. And I go to the interview. I'm overdressed for it. It's in Shoreditch. It's like really like hip, young, independent shoe shop. I'm in a full suit like for a law interview, and yeah, I roll up in there. I kind of get a few odd looks, like, is this a salesman? Like, what was he doing? Anyway, so I go have this interview with him. Yeah, I go to the interview, and I'm sort of like, oh, here's my portfolio. Like, it's a joke, but I'm like, here's my portfolio, and he's like, literally kind of like glanced at it, moved the piece of paper away, and was like, you want to be a graphic designer? I'm like, yeah, you have no idea. Like, this is my dream. It's been my dream for like the longest time, blah, blah, blah. He's like, and you got a law degree? I was like, yeah. He's like, you must really want to be a graphic designer. I was like, yes. And anyway, he gave me a shot. He said, I'll give you a week trial, see how you get on, and you got a laptop, bring it, and go from there. Anyway, I got the job from that, and it hasn't been smooth sailing since then, but I kind of got the foot in the door, and ultimately that's kind of what you need, right? So yeah, I left that, and then I went into a sports marketing design job, and that was my real trial by fire, and sort of my university degree in graphic design, working with two guys there, and learning from them how to be a professional, how to do X, Y, Z, and do it really fast, really quick, and high quality. And that was an agency that just did Formula One, so I just fell into it. Like, I didn't watch Formula One. I'm in the interview, like, is Lewis Hamilton still a thing? Because they're like, oh, do you watch Formula One? I'm like, no, not really. Like, the recruiter guy had actually gone like, oh, hi Jake, got a job opening you might be interested in. There's loads of sport in it, and I'm like, sport? Go on then. I'm like, what sport? And he's like, Formula One. I was like, don't watch it. He's like, rugby. I was like, don't watch it. He's like, sailing. Don't watch it. Cricket. Don't watch it. Golf. Don't. I'm like, I was hoping there's some football in there, but Man United, none of that. So yeah, it was kind of learning the sports industry, learning Formula One. You suddenly become a massive fan of Formula One when you're watching a race weekend, and you're like, yeah, that's that thing that I did. So I can see it, like Fernando Alonso standing in front of it, or the agency had just put Logitech on the McLaren that year. This is 2017. And so, like, every time that the camera would cut, and you'd see Logitech on like the steering wheel, or Logitech on like their race gloves, you're like, that's us. And there's this real like pride, because everyone around the world is watching this sport, but you can see something that you've done or you've put out there, and it's really weird. But yeah, fast forward, I was a senior designer, and then I left that, and then found myself at Formula One.
Okay.
As I said, it was never going to be a quick story.
For you, what's it like working for F1? Like, how would you describe it for anyone that's outside looking in?
So I guess I've got experience in sports. So if this was my first sports job, that would probably be a bit more of a hard-hitting question. Like, sport is a very fast industry. F1 in particular, because I've now worked doing agency stuff for football, golf, rugby, and different things like that. We build towards that race weekend. Everything is kind of, okay, the race is on. Friday is practice, Saturday is quali, Sunday is the race, Monday we're back in the office. We'll talk about it for 5 minutes, and now we're talking about Friday deadline. It's very fast. It's very interesting, because your job kind of revolves around not specifically you and what you're doing. There's this other thing that is out of your control that everyone is going to start talking about in relation to your job, and that can bring an influence in, and that can sometimes take an influence out. Depending on what that is. Maybe like, I don't know, a driver does something particularly meme worthy or is in the news, and suddenly that becomes the focus, and now we're going to be like, we're talking about that, which, that wasn't something you were thinking about the week prior.
Do you work across all graphics that we see online?
No. So I mean, I'm mainly on sponsorship. So a lot of what I do, you won't ever see. Dealing with a lot of partners, potential partners, and formulating ideas around that. Stuff like, I don't know, Rolex is obviously one of our sponsors. So what would a Rolex paddock suite look like, or what would a Rolex activation look like? We're going to do a Rolex promotion. Win a Rolex, if you attend the Canadian Grand Prix next year, something like that. Ideation, and then obviously executing on that, and sort of making it something that a partner is going to be interested in, sort of investing that money in, because it's a money game at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's still very cool though. Still very cool.
Look, I wanted to be a graphic designer because no 2 days are the same. That was what I wanted. I didn't want to be going in and I'm looking at the same Excel document, man. Like, I need that excitement, and not to say that it's as exciting as being on track, because it's obviously not. I'm not a race driver, but it's very rewarding. Seeing fans react to stuff you do, and not to say that they know that it's you. You know it's you, but just sort of seeing fan reaction to things, and that pride, which I think I was looking for a long time in different jobs. That sense of like, I work for ... and that's my thing, and stuff like that. So it was, it's definitely got its perks, put it that way.
Yeah, you must be so proud, because that's how I discovered you. Like, I can't remember who it was, but someone reposted one of your artworks. I think it was around the time that Lewis Hamilton broke one of many 100 record.
It's probably Lewis.
Someone reposted it. Yeah, it was last year, and I was like, oh, who's this guy? Because it's quite rare for someone working for F1 to be on social media and prominent who's not like media facing. Maybe someone in the back office, as creative as you are, doing such an important role, because social media, for me, F1 didn't really go into it too much, even up to about 24 months ago, I'd say. And then last year, because of what's happened, I think it's exploded to a whole new level. Like, they were getting a lot better since Liberty and media came on board, but the content has just become so good recently.
Yeah.
And you really see like how it's developed. So yeah, I can completely understand that feeling, wanting to have that kudos and saying I work for F1 must be so huge.
Yeah, I mean, it's not even so much kudos, like, I think it's a case of like putting face to names and stuff like that. Now, I wouldn't turn around and say like my intention from the get-go was like, oh, everyone's going to know who I am and blah, blah, blah. It's just a case of like, I've been on social media for a very long time. Like, I've been on Twitter since 2011 or something, and Instagram. I've had that Instagram account for a long time, and it's, you hear of YouTubers, for example, and they'll talk about like, oh, you think that it's like some massive explosion and this guy came out of nowhere, or this girl, like, she's doing some bits on YouTube. It turns out they've been making like 700 videos in the background, and it's not something that just kind of happened. They woke up and turned the camera on. It was, it's a sustained thing. So I started posting on that account, like sustained and stuff, and would go through these weird things. And then it was kind of like, all right, cool, let's just start posting some of the more outward facing projects, and it gained some steam. So yeah, I suppose that's why we're talking now.
What constitutes a good design for you, in your opinion? Because I see there's a lot online at the moment, just people are getting more creative. You're seeing more graphic designers really grow and grow. I know, like you said, it doesn't happen overnight, but your graphic designers getting more exposure. So it's interesting to hear from you. What do you think is a good design when it comes to F1?
When it comes to F1?
Or just in general, however you want to.
Well, I've always had not an ethic, but just my personal taste is less is more. So like I'm a massive American football fan. I like American sports, etc. So you'll see influences that I take from, something that a team puts out potentially, or an aesthetic that the Americans do, because in my opinion, they are the absolute kings of social media. All the teams that put their stuff out, they know what they're doing, etc. And it has a particular style to it, and I couldn't necessarily tell you what it is, but I know what it is. And
I know what you're
yeah,
talking about. An individual basically makes T-shirts
yeah,
based off of rappers and hip hop stars and
well, like
R&B
bootleg
stars.
ones.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
style, I mean, yeah,
The style, yeah, it's like chunky texts,
yeah,
diamond stars, and it's got their face on it, and it's very unique. When I saw it, like I was like, well, I've never seen anything like this. It's so cool.
yeah,
Like it's so cool. So I can kind of see that in your work, the way you use the figures of F1 stars, whether it's Senna or Schumacher, and then you build around them.
yeah. They're the focal point at the end of the day. Like we can wax lyrical about, I don't know, the MP44 and how, it won nearly every race that year, and, Prost and Senna, blah, blah, blah. But ultimately, that car is not going anywhere without the driver that's in it. And that's your link to the car, as as the audience. We can, unless we're very sort of engineer minded, you are going straight to like, oh, I'm a Senna guy. No, I'm a Prost guy, and Senna stands for this. Prost is the professor, and he stands for this. So that's always that link, and they're the most important things, I guess, when I think about it. But as I was saying, I mean, I think it's just that less is more. And if anyone ever tries to ask me, what's your biggest tip to be a designer, or what's your biggest, just like, do you need that much, I don't know, of a hue on it, that much contrast? If you can dial it back, the more so, you think of how, what is it the scientists say, like your eye can pick up all these intricate subtleties, whether you're conscious of it, aware of it or not, and people pick up on that. So it's better to kind of dial it back and make it more subtle, so that people study it more, and it's a bit more, going over the top. It just doesn't look good. Likewise, if you don't do it enough. So it's finding that balance.
Yeah, I can definitely agree, because with Racing House, those simple things tend to do better
Yeah,
than the complicated ones with hundreds and hundreds of numbers and stats on it.
for sure. I mean, and I have so many designers message me and say, oh, can you critique my work? Can you look at my portfolio? And can you look at my Instagram? And there's nothing, don't take it as me knocking them. I think their stuff is great, but I'm always like, is there anything you could take out of it? Because people's attention spans in 2021, when they're on Instagram, they've been locked down for however many months for the 67th time. Attention spans are not what they used to. So you put in a sort of small paragraph in there about how much, Mansell meant to you as a driver. No one cares. Like, they're not going to read this chunk of writing. So keep it. I'm an Office USA fan, and he says in that, Kiss, keep it simple, stupid. That's my mantra, man. That's it. Keep it simple, stupid.
I love how you reference the Office USA. Like,
anytime I can.
I've read on your website and from just reading about you, and it's quite cool the way you just up sticks. And how old were you when you just decided to make that detour?
I think I must have been, I'm 30 this year, so I must have been like 25, 26.
Okay.
But it was, you've got to look at it from a point of view that my mindset at that point is very much like, I don't want to turn around and go like, oh, I was depressed. Like, no one turned around. I wasn't like, no one said, Jake, you're depressed. I was not diagnosed depressed, but I can tell you, like, my mindset, like right now talking to you, was very different to the mindset that I was in there. And I was not healthy and stuff like that. And it really was a case of, do you want to do something for the next, so if I'm 25, another maybe just shy of 50 years, 40 years, your job and your career is something that ultimately is going to be into your 60s maybe even later the way things are going in the world. But I was like, I can't keep doing this job that I'm not interested in, doesn't motivate me, it doesn't drive me. You're working for the weekend. And I was like, I can't, I'm wishing my life away. That's 5 days of your week that you're just like, come on, man, come on, come on, come on. You get them too, that 48 hours is quick. It's real quick.
Yeah, it's quite interesting how you got through the thought process of how you just realised corporate life wasn't for you. Did you find the transition quite hard?
I wouldn't. I'm a laid back dude, so corporate life, like I rubbed up against corporate life quite badly. And it was the same with like when I was doing the law degree. You're on this degree with people that, from day one, well, not day one, but in their early formative years, they're like, "Oh, I'm going to be a lawyer." It's one of those jobs: lawyer, banker, doctor, all that sort of stuff. And so on my first day of my degree, there's people there who are just like, "Oh, this is perfect. I've dreamt of this my whole life." I took law because I liked it and I did it at college and I was all right at it. So I didn't really fit in there, and then I didn't fit in when I went into the sort of corporate environment. And ultimately, it was probably a good thing, because when I went into the design route, it was like a match made in heaven. Not to say that everyone in design is laid back and chill and, oh, that deadline, let's put it back a week. It doesn't work like that. But working in an independent hip shoe company where, I've gone from wearing a full suit and I'm now rolling into the office wearing like jogging bottoms and Jordans, and I was so much more comfortable, and, they allowed you to express yourself. It was kind of like, wow. And it was probably more of an adjustment to go from that to an agency where it is a bit more formal, not as corporate, but it is further down that spectrum. And you just have to take everything as a lesson. Good, bad, everything in between. It's kind of like, all right, so what did I do in that last job? And did I upset that person? Did they have a certain opinion about me? Okay, right, in this next job, they're going to think the exact opposite or whatever that is. And it's just finding that balance. And it's been interesting, put it that way. I'm kind of this weird hybrid.
So it sounds like obviously you were a big football fan. You didn't really have that love for F1 when you started. So that's one of the questions I was going to ask. Like, were you a fan of F1 before? And it's obviously turned into more of a thing that you follow now, because it's fairly easy for you to follow, but you're going to have that added interest. So you touched on it a little bit earlier on about people asking advice on their design and what you think of their work. But for someone not working in F1 at the moment in any capacity or working in any industry, what advice would you give to them, being someone that is on the inside? Because for me, like, it's basically thinking I'll never work in F1, but I know a lot of people that is their ambition, that's their goal. So what would you say to them?
Well, don't stop trying, for starters. I think a lot of probably more the younger generation kind of think that everything is like a Rocky montage, and after 90 seconds and a really like high paced like soundtrack, you get everything that you want. It's not the case at all. I've had a lot of doors closed in my face. Oh, you don't have enough experience. Oh no, blah blah blah. It's perseverance, and perseverance is a muscle, and you kind of have to train it, and you kind of have to be patient, and you just have to keep striving to get what you want. And I think as time goes on, I think the pandemic and the way that there's been this shift in mindset between someone working a 40-hour work week and that's their life for the next 50 years has changed. People's priorities have shifted, and I think companies' mindsets have shifted. Now, I can't speak necessarily to F1, but it's networking is always my top tip or secret power, I guess. Going out on places like LinkedIn, and this isn't a sponsored plug or anything, but you just have to reach out to people. There's no point you sort of sitting in your room and, hypothetically you want to be a graphic designer and you're just kind of posting it on your Instagram account that has, 4 followers and one of them is your mum. It's got to be that you've got to reach out. So I'm probably aware that my inbox is going to get flooded, but it's reaching out to people that work in industries that you want to work in. If you're a journalist, reach out to journalists, ask them, if they have 5 minutes to, just to jump on a call or something like that. And it's learning the industry as well. You've got to work out how, what are the intricacies of it, because no two industries are identical. And you think of how many different people are involved in Formula One at various levels and stuff like that. So research is just so important, and you can't underestimate knowing the right person to talk to, rather than talking to the receptionist who doesn't actually ever talk to the CEO of whatever company. So research, network, and patience, really, and just keep doing what you're doing, because at some point, like I said, it's not like I've just decided I was going to post a graphic one day and then boom, suddenly people knew who I was. I've been posting for a very long time, put it that way, very long time. So Rome wasn't built in a day. So just keep doing what you're doing, try to improve, and understand what it is you're in for, because it's not a short process.
That is some very good advice for people watching and listening. How do you think that F1 can make the sport more accessible?
I think it's taking its first steps now, and we're seeing it with things like We Race as One. I think there's been a cultural shift as of last summer. In the grand scheme of things, we can probably do a entire podcast about George Floyd and Black Lives Matter, etc., etc. But in the grand scheme of things, that was almost like, when you throw that pebble into the lake and the ripples that come out after it. We're looking at a very different world now than we were, before that day. And I think priorities have shifted, and people are more aware that actually diversity is a strength, it's not a weakness, and it's just making people aware. I think, as I said, people have woken up a little bit to not just issues around race, but issues about gender, sexuality, disabilities, etc. And people are, it's a sustained thing. It's not something that we're going to solve in 5 minutes. It's people standing up and sort of challenging. And I think it's that culture that we've got to foster throughout the sport and throughout society, because sport and society and culture, they are all very intricate and very intermingled. And you look at the NBA and what was going on there a few years ago when LeBron is talking about, like, I'm not just an athlete, like I'm going to talk about these issues. And I'd be remiss to not talk about Lewis Hamilton and him doing a LeBron, really, and sort of saying, look, here's my platform. And I think people need to realise that it doesn't matter, you could be the team principal, you could be, I don't know, a member of the catering team, but every single person has a platform. That platform could be with 4 people, 400, 400,000, 4 billion, whatever. And it really is just a case of challenging when people say, things that are maybe a bit ignorant or aren't factoring in other people's sort of perspectives, because that's what makes everything better. You build a better sport, you build a better community when people feel that they can speak up and people feel that they're represented, because not every sports fan is from one country or look a certain way or one gender, etc. So if you turn around and you suddenly kind of factor in what South Africa thinks about Formula One or wrestling or football, and start to really listen to those fans, and you bring some of that into it, suddenly South Africa is going to watch your product, they're going to watch your sport. You start to bring all these different mindsets in, and suddenly people's voices are heard, and you might get someone suggest something that no one in the room would have thought of, if it was just, 2 dudes from London.
Yeah, that is very true. That's very true. I'm going to break this up a little bit and ask you a few questions to see what type of F1 fan you are now that you've evolved into the sport. So who's your favourite driver from the past, and who's your favourite driver on the present grid.
Senna, Lewis Hamilton.
And why do you pick those two?
Senna to me is the GOAT. Lewis is a GOAT in his own way, but I just think Senna, you probably heard the sort of references I've just been giving in some of these answers. Like, I like what Senna stood for. And I think, look, and this is not me knocking Lewis by any means. Like, Lewis is easily my favourite driver in the current format, but Senna is, the blueprint, prodigy on the track, helping people, selfless. You look at the times, he ran onto the track to help. How upset he was the day before he died. He was just a very unique human, in my opinion. And, I think the sport was, not that it was weaker without him, it was just very different. And it's just such a huge loss. And you look at the impact he still has on Brazil.
Yeah, he's just an icon. He's a huge icon, but you never know with Lewis what the future holds.
He's going to. I believe firmly he will do more off track than he'll ever do on track. I think he'll be a bigger champion for all these different causes that he is championing now than he would be as a 8, 9, 20-time champion. Frankly,
yeah, that's a good call, to be honest, because I forget how young he is. He's only 5 years older than both of us. He's 35, 36 maybe.
I think he just turned 36,
Yeah, 36, so he's got a whole lot of life ahead of him.
Just starting.
And he's just starting. He's got all the connections in the world, all the influence. Every time I look at his comment section, I have to just double take, because the people that are commenting under his photos, the ones with the blue ticks, they're all global icons in their own right. So to have those kind of connections,
exactly,
at the moment, it's only going to get stronger, and I'm pretty sure he's got a lot planned for himself going forward.
Yeah, a guy like that has a plan. He's got a mindset. You got to start planning for your future. You talk about footballers and them being like, oh, I'm getting into property development and stuff like that. So yeah, I have no doubt that this is kind of the beginning for him in terms of what he does next. Yeah,
and one bold prediction from you in terms of who do you see as a team that will cause a surprise, or a driver even, in 2021, 2022, 23 even.
Oh, 24.
Who do you think is a kind of undercover champion or race winner just in the waiting? Or who are you excited to see?
I'm excited to see Vettel. I want to see him kind of get a new lease on life, a car that... not that the Ferrari was absolutely horrific and, he's had terrible Ferrari cars by any means. I just think that Aston car is going to be a bit more suited for what he wants. It felt to me that they were probably kind of, putting more priority on Leclerc. What does Charles want? Charles likes, his rear axle to do X, Y, Z. Vettel, we don't care. So I think Vettel will be very interesting. Will it be a new lease of life, or is he kind of peaked and stuff like that? I think Fernando, I'm very curious to see what Fernando does coming back. Surprises. I reckon Mick Schumacher will tear it up. I think you got to look at how much pressure must be on his shoulders, the expectation and stuff like that. And I think so far the media haven't ramped it up on him yet. I think maybe after the first race, maybe.
Yeah, that's actually a good point, because I've not really seen that much hype around him, given
who his dad is.
Like, F1 fans are so excited to have him back. Yeah. His dad is obviously one of the greatest drivers, if not the greatest driver ever. But the media haven't really hounded him or given him much of a spotlight.
No. Enjoy it while it lasts, Mick. I mean, it'll be interesting. I mean, I hope he does well. It'll be a great story. But I just hope that he doesn't get buried under this weight of expectation, because he's his own man. He's not Michael, he's Mick, and they're not the same person. So I think expectations just need to kind of, let him, let him drive, and let's see what he's got.
Just tune down a tiny bit. Just a tiny bit.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'll keep on having questions pop into my mind. What's your favourite design that you have done so far? For F1, let's say.
I'm still quite partial to the first one. I think it was the podiums one. He tied Schumacher for podiums, and that was the first one. And I think it's more because I know the background behind it. I know the sweat, blood, maybe a few tears, but that was I dig deep for that one, just to kind of generate it and formulate it and stuff like that, because we hadn't really done anything like that before. It was kind of its own thing, and it's quite unique. And I think, look, some of the other ones are better, but for sure. But that one, the energy that went into it, and I mean, it's one graphic is up there for 5 minutes and whatever, but the hours I put into it were there was a lot of hours.
Yeah, I remember that one. It was pretty cool. And just lastly, how did the LinkedIn thing come about? Because I always look at that and think, wow,
that was a weird one. So if I don't know if you're an avid user of LinkedIn, but at the time, I think it's changed how the website works now. But they used to send a lot of adverts via the messages on there, but it would look like a message from someone. So sometimes you get a message from like Richard Branson. You go, Richard? Oh, okay. And you open it, and it's not Richard Branson. It's just he's doing a thing for 12-year-old entrepreneurs, and if you know someone, enter here. So yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, and this message pops up one day, and it's like, oh, if you've got your job on LinkedIn, we'd love to hear from you. So I'm like, all right, cool. I'll give you some feedback. I'll rate LinkedIn for its searches because I'm really lazy, and I like to just press one, click apply, and I ain't got time to sit there and hammer out a full. I've been burned so badly in the past. Spending hours filling out forms and not getting even an email back. I'm like, nah. So I was like, I'll give them some feedback on that. I think it's really neat, and it's like the unique selling point to me. So I emailed them that, and it just kind of went forward and forwards to the point where I think that I'm probably going to go to their office at some point during a lunchtime and film some kind of video, something similar to this, camera, your name in the corner, Jake Paul, graphic designer. So Jake, tell us about, when you first went on whatever. And I think it's like some low key thing. And I think I was on holiday in Florida, and next thing I'm on a phone call with a casting agent, and I'm like, what? I was like, I don't know anything about this. Like, I don't know this world. So I'm like, all right, so maybe she's got some say, whatever. So I do this thing with her, and she's like, yeah, no, we'll talk to you. We'll put you forward. And then fast forward again, I find myself in the production office, and it's literally like BAFTA, award. Like, this is a wall of awards, and I'm like, what am I? I'm like, this is pretty high key for just some videos that you're just gonna film a 30-second thing of me. And then the wardrobe lady comes in, and I'm like, I'm sorry, like, you're the wardrobe lady. This is bizarre. Anyway, I'm trying on clothes and stuff. Roll up on the day of filming, and there's like production trucks with cables coming out everywhere, and they've got minivans, they've got set crew, they've got runners. I walk through the door like an idiot. I'm like, oh hi, I'm Jake. This is over. I must be like on the set, like they must be filming multiple things or something. And I go in, and there's just cameras everywhere, blah blah blah. And they're like, so you've been on film, right? I'm like, no. Like, my dad's filmed me, like when I was like 4 and on his VHS. Like, what? And they're like, right, so about cues, and they're marking things on the floor, they're putting powder on my nose, and I've got people. Dude, do you know how weird it is when you're just like sat here, like as we are now, and you might be talking to someone, you might be on your phone, and someone just comes up behind you. I mean, I've shaved my head for quarantine, and they're just like, we're just putting some curl activator, and they don't ask you, they don't. It doesn't want to come up to you, and they're like, what? Oh, Jake, I just want to put some. They're just like bang. And you're like, oh, who? I don't even know who you are.
curl activator. Wow.
Dude, I've never had that before. I was like, my curls are fine, thank you. What are you talking? They're coming over, miking you up. I had a guy following me around with the boom mic. We filmed it in 3 different places. In the office, in outside, around the corner from Liverpool Street Station, and then in some bloke's house, which was quite crazy. But yeah, long story short, it was one of the weirdest days of my life that I wasn't prepared for. And I didn't even know it was going to be on TV till like halfway through the day. And the funny part was, we're filming that bit outside Liverpool Street Station, and I'm like, I'd been killing it up until this point because there's not really a whole lot of people in there, and in my head I'm just like, this is a laugh, like whatever. and we're outside of Liverpool Street Station with all these offices, and they have a fire alarm, and about 3,000 people come out of the buildings, and yeah, suddenly I'm right in front of everyone. All the lights on me. People don't know who the hell I am. Why a camera is following me. Why there's all this stuff going on. And people have got their phones out recording me. Like, oh yeah. It's like, well, who's this guy? It was bizarre. It was like being George Clooney for a day or something. You know, people like, Jake, do you need some more water? Do you need some tea? Do you need we're just going to go to Costa if you want a coffee. Do you want anything?
That sounds so surreal. So surreal.
It was. I think it was probably a communication breakdown. Like, you know, there were so many people involved in it that they thought the other person was told me and stuff like that. So they were just as confused. I didn't understand what the hell was going on, just as much as I was confused as to what was going on. And, you know, suddenly you find yourself being front and center everywhere. You know, I went to the train station and my face is there and I'm kind of like, oh God, kind of like, oh no. Just, you know, you've got people looking in the newspaper, looking at it and looking at you, and it's a very weird time period. You see yourself like on the side of a bus with your name on it as well. So it's like so many people add me on LinkedIn and stuff like that. It was the weirdest thing, but it was so cool because there's something you tell your grandkids about, and you know how many people have been on a national TV advert.
Yeah, none that I know.
No, exactly.
That is pretty cool. Well, yeah, thank you for joining me today.
No worries,
it's been a pleasure. Like I said, your story is super cool, very inspirational. I've certainly taken a lot from it, and I hope that anybody who's watching it now feels inspired, because I love to see people succeed. And yeah, you've completely kind of changed my mindset ever since reading your story. Like Jake said, just keep your head down, keep going with stuff.
Keep pushing, as Max says.
Keep pushing like Max says.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to ensure that you get all my latest videos.